Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is a short story spotlight video for February 2026. Uh, it's been, I think, a little while since I've done a video particularly like this, but in the past in BookTube, I wanted to take some opportunities throughout the year to shout out, well, first of all, short fiction, because I write short stories and enjoy reading them, and I particularly wanted to look at short stories from smaller presses and that sort of thing. You know, the type of stuff that it doesn't get as much buzzy coverage. And here we are now. I'm filming this at the tail end of President's Weekend in the US, so I had a 3-day weekend, and I figured that could give me a little more time to tackle one of these books. And perhaps apropos to the national holiday, I decided to tackle This Is What America Looks Like. This is a anthology of poetry and fiction from DC, Maryland, and Virginia, put out by the small press, the Washington Writers Publishing House. Usually you see this book kind of in the corner over there of my bookshelf, and I even use it to anchor some overlay images in my videos. But now I've gone ahead and I've read through the short fiction parts at least, and I highlighted 5 stories that particularly stood out to me. I even put in these little tabs to indicate them. So the Washington Writers Publishing House is a very interesting local press. I think for many years it was kind of staid in its execution that every year it would hold a contest for local writers to enter with their poetry and their fiction, and there'd be a winner that would be published in both of those genres, and we'd get 2 small books of poetry and fiction. But then a handful of years ago, our winners went ahead and really tried to revitalize the press and do more with it. And they have this online literary journal that publishes microfiction and poetry like every 2 weeks that you can get mailed to you. And they've had more anthologies come out as well. I don't think this is the first anthology ever. I think some years back there was another anthology like this one, but this was the one that came out in 2020, and the first one in a while, I believe. And like I said, I feel like where the Washington Writers Publishing House is right now, they tend to favor more of the flash fiction and microfiction, which generally isn't my style as much. I like something with a little more heft and a little more character development. So I enjoyed reading these stories. I do feel like maybe you wouldn't find them quite as much in the legacy, literary magazines, that sort of thing, perhaps. But I think I was more drawn in a way to the, longer pieces. And also, people did take the This Is What America Looks Like to heart. I did see a few stories that, took place in my backyard in the DC area, certainly, and there were a lot that got pretty on the nose politically. And those tended not to be my favorites, but I'll just go ahead and highlight the 5 here that personally spoke to me for various reasons. So the first story I'll mention is Waffle House by Danielle Stonehirsch, which takes place in a Waffle House, which I think in the broader American context, especially in the South, is a bit of, a staple. It's a fast food joint that is, centered around waffles. And this particular Waffle House takes place outside of like Disney theme parks. But our POV character is a really run-down waitress. She's making minimum wage. She also has a job at Target. She's barely making ends meet. And she's doing this really menial, unfulfilling work. She describes a lot of it as, mopping up shit, basically. And in this story, in the present, storyline, she's being disrespected by customers. And she's basically counting down the hours until she can get some reprieve by going home to where her roommate will help her pick out movies to watch as a nice sort of escapism. And then something else that happens near the end of the story that really, in a way, jumps things up and in a way doesn't, is that there's this really awkward burglary attempt, which, really, in a way, it's more interesting for what it says about the clientele, because they're in sort of the Disney haze, they're in their fun escapism, and the burglary is something that's freaky and unhappy to them. But to a certain extent, to her, it's like one more thing she has to deal with before, damn it, I just want to go home and watch my movie and that sort of thing. I mean, it's not like she's completely unfazed by it, but, it's an interesting take on, this character just really pops for me. The second story I'll mention is Brothers by Adam Schwartz. This is a story that starts with Janine breaking up with Oren, in part because she is sleeping with his brother, and the POV of the story, whose name is Lyle. So that's how we start, with her going to him to say she's breaking up with Oren, and they have a sexual encounter, and then she leaves. And then Oren goes off kind of adventuring on his own, and Lyle is tense, like, is Oren going to catch on to why this breakup happened, or a major part of why it happened? And he does come back, and there's an intense encounter in the heart of the story where Oren is testing Lyle, and as the reader, you're kind of on the edge of your seat, like, is it going to come out? Is Lyle going to admit to what Oren already seems to know and is, testing him about? And there's also this colorful secondary character who Oren befriended in his travels. So it's a really colorful story, and I thought the tension was very much on point. I did then choose two stories that I did think were a bit on the nose politically, but it's just difficult not to look at them and think about them, particularly from the lens of 5 years in the future from 2020, because of course this anthology was published during Trump's first administration, and now we're in his second administration. So the first story I'll mention is Good People by Karen Garcia Martinez. And so this is a story that's from the perspective of a MAGA person in like rural Ohio. And he's cottoning up to the unfairness of the Trump immigration policies because he has befriended and, has a really strong relationship with a neighbor who is an immigrant. And this neighbor, has an establishment in town, a mom and pop store that he likes to go to. And the two of them help coach Little League, and their kids play on Little League together. So he sees this neighbor as a neighbor and not as an outsider. But unfortunately, decades ago, when the neighbor was like 15, he was involved in a minor drug altercation, and the Trump policies are ramping up sending immigrants home however they can grab them and haul them into court. So they're able to track down this guy over this minor drug infraction from years ago, and the MAGA guy is realizing this is unfair, that this doesn't match who my friend is now, and maybe more generally also, what Trump promised isn't necessarily coming true, or doesn't map to the fact that, life hasn't gotten any easier for the MAGA guy. So, it's just interesting to look at that, because now we have the same situation happening, but worse. The immigration policies are only more draconian and horrifying to broader amounts of people, so I can only hope that this character of the MAGA guy is something that more people who voted for Trump might find more familiar. And the second story is In Lieu of Graduation, 2020 by Jareen Asasi, which, in all of these stories, a lot of them too also reference COVID. And in this case, the main characters are this mother and daughter who have to, think up some new graduation rituals because, schools are closed. And so they're going to a landmark that's associated with their family and their immigrant past to the U.S. to take some photos, like the mother taking photos of the daughter at this sign and this landmark. But when they drive there, they see an ICE facility, or an ICE operation more accurately, where there are migrant children who are performing work. And it obviously, looks very questionable about what's going on. These are children, and the agents immediately come up to them to say, "What are you doing? Why do you have a camera? Let me take a look at your pictures." So the tension is ratcheted up again, because we saw that they were, shocked by the scene in front of them, and they were taking photos. And the question is, like, would the ICE agents, realize that and, confiscate the camera? So there's that tension there as well, which, it's another thing that feels even more harrowing now, because if anything, of course, the tactics of ICE officers has only gotten worse, that, they're actively attacking and killing U.S. citizens as well, who aren't even directly involved in anything to do with immigration. So, you know, it's just, you know, more disconcerting, I think, even to read this story now than it would have been then. But to return to something a little less political, but, you know, still family-based, I'm going to wrap things up with an author who is local, and I've read some of her novels and short stories and appreciated them. And this short story is I Am Your Mask by Michelle Braffman. And it's a little bit more experimental in a way, so, you know, I got to, you know, enjoy some of that type of writing as well. The POV is the deceased father speaking to his son Patrick. Patrick is going to stay with his sister Jillian as he dries out from, you know, his addictions, and he is trying to proactively, you know, bring something to, you know, help Jillian out around her house, which the father approves of not freeloading. And the father, this ghostly figure, also apparently had some similar addiction issues, so I guess that's why he is speaking to his son, or maybe the son is manifesting him in some way, but he is kind of a mask, it seems like the son is wearing as well, or that's how the father refers to himself. So it's just some interesting, both family dynamics and just dynamics of what it's like to deal with addiction and regret. So that about covers it for me now. I will leave links to the Washington Writers Publishing House down below, and the Goodreads page for this anthology as well. Also, I'll leave a link to my playlist for short story videos down below in case you'd like to see more of that material. I did go ahead and take my picture. I was on the train earlier today because I was visiting my family in Baltimore, and then I was coming home to the DC area. I thought it was an apropos moment because we're still in the, you know, snowy, desolate winter hellscape here. So in the background of my photo on the train is, you know, still the, you know, bare trees and the snow for a literal, this is what America looks like right now moment. Anyway, I'm just having a little too much fun. But you should see me back here on this channel in the near future with my Author's Answer video. Author's Answer is a monthly set of tags I like to take part in, taking a look at my reading and writing life, so stay tuned for that. So I hope all of you in the US found a fun way to observe President's Day, whether it be with short stories or any other media or activities. And thanks so much for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.